placed on public record. Our union have reached out to members of council regarding the critical 911 operation issues, not today, previously some several years up to today. We have put out countless calls for help, but our calls have seemed to be put on hold, delayed, or unanswered. Our members are frustrated from the inactions, and some are facing retaliation for speaking up and also being a whistleblower. However, members still care deeply enough about the people they serve, knowing that they are the lifeline for help. Keeping silent is not an option for PACE, and as constantly we are being requested to speak out on their behalf. Our call takers and dispatchers already undergo tremendous stress in handling calls, and they should be able to sleep at night knowing that they have done their best in serving the people when they call in for emergency situations. As a union, we feel we have done all we can do to get action. So far, meetings we have had in the prior to the meeting last week have not yet produced the results and or resolves we have expected. We have been crying out for help in these matters for our members for quite a long time, several years ago as a fact. Recently, PACE has submitted the administration and council our most current issues during a meeting last week. I hope this information was read, taken seriously, and currently we are now waiting on the results. Going forward, PACE will come before to you to place on record our continued efforts of our issues and concerns, not just for E911, but for all other departments where our members need our help. It is the best that we can do to sleep at night while we're advocating for our members. When a disaster happens in any situation and there is inaction, at least our members will know that PACE, this union, did not keep silent. Please know the health, safety, and welfare of our employees and the citizens we serve is high priority. PACE will continue to sound the alarm. The question remains, will you answer the call before it's too late? Thank you.
Next is Ms. Honoree Jordan.
Giving out to the Spirit of God. And in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Revelation 9th chapter, 6th verse. They do not harm the vegetation or ordinary locusts, but only men who do not belong to God. I heard James Montgomery took a picture of me in my house. And Jesus told me to get with James is to ask for death. And on my servants and on my handmaids, I will pour out in those days of my spirit, and they shall prophesy. Acts 2nd chapter, 8th verse, 18th verse. I had a vision that the people are in a big bubble. They couldn't enjoy the trees, the land, the mountains, or even the atmosphere. The Lord said the answer's in the homeless calling on Jesus. They have business plan for the saving of an enormous amount of souls and lives. Behold, here I am, witness against me before the Lord and before his anointed. Whose ox have I taken? Whose ass have I taken? Or whom have I defrauded? Whom have I oppressed? Or whose hand have I received any bribe to blind mine eyes therewith? And I will restore it you. 1 Samuel 12:3. I asked the Lord, can you create income without deceit, defraud, lying, mischief, treachery, robbery, or oppression? Then Jesus gave me business plans, intellectual properties, etc. that's created over $1 billion I have not yet to receive. The income was created for the purpose of saving an enormous amount of souls and lives. Whoso causes his father or his mother, whoso curses his father or his mother, his lamp shall be put out in obscure darkness. Proverbs 20th chapter, 20th verse. To respect mother and father, who are God's representatives, and not to rob from them. Christ warned us through his words, not only you, but only also me. I have to speak the word of God for my cleansing, because I want Christ to use me to fight sin in me, around me, and in others. Thank you. and obey Jesus.
Next is Mr. Devin Barrington Ward.
Good afternoon, members of the committee and those who are attended here today. My name is Devin Barrington Ward. I serve as the managing director and lead organizer for the Black Futurist Group, which is a proud member of the Alliance to Close and Reimagine the Atlanta City Detention Center. I'm here in front of you all today for two issues. One, last week on social media, several accounts, including ATL Scoop and Georgia Uncensored, shared a video of a young man in Old Fourth Ward Park who was accused of vaping that was tased by an Atlanta police officer. In the climate that we are in here in the city of Atlanta, I think public safety also has to be weighed with priorities. What is the priorities of our precious public safety resources in this city? Is it a good use of our resources and to prioritize tasing a young man over vaping? Or is it a better use of resources to use our police department to stop the flow of illegal guns into our city? Is it a better use of our city resources to make sure that there are the adequate programs that are needed to keep young people out of trouble? Is it a better use of our city resources to not expose young people to the horrors of the criminal legal system over something as minor as vaping in the park? I live in Buckhead, where not that far from my house, a 6-month-old was gunned down because of a drive-by shooting. That's a priority. A young man vaping in the park, that is not a priority. In addition to that, if we saw and examined the behavior of the officer, she appeared to be scared. She didn't seem like she was in control of the situation at all. Who do we have on our streets? We need to make sure that we have officers on our street that are not afraid to interact with the public as we are doing the hard work of reimagining public safety. I believe the best use of this body's resources is to make sure that we're fighting the governor from adopting crazy gun laws that's going to put more Atlanta residents at risk. That's what we should be prioritizing as public safety here in the city of Atlanta, not tasing young people who are accused of vaping in the park. The last thing that I would like to mention is there has been some rumblings in the rumor mill that there may be pending or possible legislation to again consider leasing ACDC to Fulton County. On behalf of those who served on Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom's task force, I would submit to you all that that is the wrong approach. Please look at the recommendations of that task force and already look at what we've done with the building, because we're in the process of converting it. We already have diversion programs that are robust and working there, given opportunity for reimagined public safety to work here in the city of Atlanta. Thank you.
And our final public commenter is Kim Natarajan.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Natarajan, and I am the Deputy Director at Partners for Home. I am here to offer our support for Ordinance 22-1076. This is the proposal to add an exemption for homeless youth to the Atlanta City curfew. We see this as an opportunity to decriminalize homelessness, and we support the decriminalization of homelessness for people of all ages, including those youth 16 and under who would be affected by the curfew. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have 3 presentations, but before we get to those, we have 2 communications for appointments I'd like to take first to be respectful of their time. The first one is 22C 5044. Ms. Lindo, could you please read that in?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is a communication from Collie Greenwood, Interim General Manager for the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority, submitting the appointment of Chief Michael Scott Kerr to serve as a member of the Public Safety Commission.
Deputy Chief, or excuse me, I'm going old school. Deputy Chief Kerr. Chief Kerr, would you like to say hi to us again and tell us your interest in serving on the commission? And welcome.
Good afternoon. It's good to see some old faces and some new ones. Welcome to probably the hardest job you're ever going to have. Good luck. You might not know I retired from the Atlanta Police Department after serving 28 years with a fantastic city and a fantastic police department to take over as the MARTA Chief of Police. And I've been there now 2 years, and I have a fantastic organization and leadership at MARTA that I continue to work with. Looking forward to serving on the commission. I think being a humble servant of public safety for almost 30 years now, I want to continue in that, not just for the Atlanta city government, but for the entire region. And I think this gives me an opportunity to do that. So I'm looking forward to serving.
Thank you, Chief, for being here today and for your 27 years of service to the city and your continued service to MARTA.
Thank you.
Anyone with any questions or comments? If not, I will make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open, Mr. Chair. The vote is closed.
All right, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you, Chief. And this will go to the Committee on Council, but you will not need to appear again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is 22C 5045, item number 2, Ms. Lindo.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is a communication from Councilmember Byron Amos, District 3, appointing Mr. Dwayne Martin to serve as a member of the Alcohol Technical Advisory Group, ATAC 3.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, again, if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself and your willingness and interest to serve on this body.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee. My name is Dwayne Martin. I'm an attorney in the city of Atlanta. I've practiced law in the city of Atlanta for the past 25 years or so. Before that, I was a city employee, worked in the city council and in the mayor's office. As a practicing attorney, I do represent many businesses that are regulated by the city of Atlanta through the license and permits unit of the police department specifically. So I have some experience in some of the issues associated with the administration of the city code with respect to alcohol licensing. I'd like to offer my expertise and experience to assist ATAG in its efforts to further improve the city code as a respect to the issuance and monitoring of alcohol licenses in the city of Atlanta.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any questions or comments for Mr. Martin? Been approved by Councilmember Boone. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open, Mr. Chair. The vote is closed.
That item is favorable with 4 yeas and 2 abstentions. This will move on as the previous one to the Committee on Council. You will not need to reappear, and then on to the full council.
Thank you very much.
Next up is our presentations. I almost forgot those and was going to jump to the consent agenda. First, we have our Atlanta Police Department Biweekly update. And today we've been joined by Deputy Chief Timothy Peake to provide that for us. Deputy Chief Peake.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Hillis, and all the other esteemed council members, Councilmember Amos, Norwood, Boone, Overstreet, and Waits. It's a pleasure to be here today and presenting our biweekly update for the Atlanta Police Department. If we could move on to slide 1. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. So as we look at the crime COBRA report as that's going from March 24th, what we notice with our crime trends, particularly as we look at the crimes against persons, There's a 55%, what we see as a 55% overall increase, but when we break that down and we look specifically at our homicide numbers, our homicide, we look week to week, 5 versus 3 on the previous week, which gives us a 67% increase, 5 versus 3. Again, the challenge is with our 28-day and the 56-day, which is 17 versus 10, which gives us a 70% increase with our homicides. And additionally, year to date, we're looking at a 46% increase. As we specifically dive into our homicides, and we constantly on a weekly basis really take a look at it to see exactly what's happening and what's driving our homicide numbers. One of the things that we did do and we noticed is that we took a closer look at those homicide numbers, and with the updated numbers of today, we're looking at about 5 of them that we can actually specifically attribute to gang violence. Of that, the other part is about 58% of the participants that are involved in homicides, whether it be a victim who has a tie to a gang or one of the suspects who have ties to gangs. We're looking at about a 58% amount of involvement and activity with that specific area. So we're working closely with the district attorney's office, ensuring that we do all that we can do to impact those numbers as we continue to strategize for our gang violence. We have a robust gang unit that's constantly responding to pretty much every homicide unless it's absolutely known that it's not, but we're taking that dive each and every time. As we look at our rate numbers, so year to date, we're having about a 45% increase. There were none reported for this previous week, and then 4 against 26 in that other 28-day. One of the things that we constantly look at with our rate numbers is looking again at those drivers, which typically ends up being social media. People that are using a bunch of different apps, they're usually acquaintance situations. Very rarely do we see stranger on stranger incidents, but we are certainly studying those numbers again and trying to do PSAs and a lot of other things to try to impact those numbers. As we look at aggravated assaults, that number as we look week to week is concerning, as we see 54 incidents versus 33 for the week, which puts us at a 64% increase. When you take a dive at that number and we really look at it, what we're looking in this particular situation is we're counting victims as opposed to incidents. So where our incidents very well may be even towards the year to date from last year, I think recently we've had about 3 incidents that counted for about 30 victims, which would give us a 30 raw number to be in compliance with the new NIBRS crime counting category. So certainly always looking at aggravated assaults. So then the large portion of those as well would be family violence issues or things such as one person may pick up a soda can and throw it at someone. And unfortunately, we have to count that as an aggravated assault according to FBI guidelines. And so when we look at that overall, we're seeing a 3% overall increase in our violent crimes. As we look down below and we start looking at our property crimes, which right now has a 5% overall reduction, we look at robbery, and so we're at a 26% decrease in robberies. At our burglaries, we're at a 15% increase. And again, with those, so early in the year, we had some struggles with what we call the storage facilities, where there were a bunch of storage facilities that were broken into, and people don't find out until they come back to search, and then they're able to report those, and we on the front end report them individually. But since that time, we've put a number of people in jail that were responsible for those incidents. As we look at our larceny from autos, which has always been a problem recently that's plagued us with the car break-ins, we're at a 12% decrease for that week, as well as a 28-day at a 14% decrease, and we're 1% up for the year. That's a crime that we're certainly working with all of our metro partners to share information and looking at it. We ultimately know that the auto thefts are usually the vehicles that are used to turn around and commit those crimes. So we do all that we can for impacting. And then we look again at our shopliftings, where they're 41% down and 1% up for the end of the year. Other larcenies, again, for this particular year, this week, there was 4% increase, and for our 58, 56 day comparison, a 7% increase, but 9% down for the year to date. And then the other piece that we really have to focus on, again, as I spoke on just a moment ago, our auto theft numbers. So for the week, 17% down, 13% down as we look at the 28-56 comparison, and then 22% down for the year, which is huge from where we were from last year. So continuously pushing out information to our citizens so that we can be smarter citizens all together and do things that would keep us from being victims, and then really and truly going after the ones that we know are committing the crimes, doing warrant executions and trying to get those off the street. We can move forward. So the next slide is on me, and I'm still asking for help, and it's all on me. I got to get it together. So we look at a deeper dive again on the homicide number. So we'll see right now the Zone 1 has 11, Zone 2 has 1 homicide, Zone 3 is leading the city at 12, Zone 4 has 4, 5 has 6, and Zone 6 has 7. And so what we do is we look and we concentrate again with all of the information that I just gave. As you'll see, 34% of those are due to escalating disputes where people are having a conversation and it goes bad, and instead of walking away, they choose to pull a weapon and shoot. We had 15% that were motive of robbery, 10% where there's a narcotics nexus to it. And so we just really and truly, when we see those situations, we're making sure that our narcotics unit is certainly getting involved with those homicide investigations so that we can really and truly see what other areas could be impacted. And then as we look at our locations, apartment complexes account for 34%. And then the other challenge is the 34% that are associated with highways and streets. So we know that recently we have seen some of the incidents that have taken places on highways and different things. So what we're having to do on those is really, it makes it a little harder to solve because everybody's driving by. You don't have the same type of witnesses that you would find in other situations. Yet still, we've been successful in really the cases that we have. We're working them closely with the Criminal Investigations Unit, and they're doing a great job with identifying and following leads as they come. And then, of course, the 10% is the involvement with clubs. And so with that, working closely with the nuisance team and ensuring that we have the right resources and working with those off-duty officers that are representing those particular areas. The other part that we wanted to present on, Chairman Willis, I know you asked for the you asked for the repeat offenders. So we look back at our week 11 repeat offenders to see what's happening and how we're looking on certain situations. And so weapons charges being one of the looking at weapons, violent crimes, property crimes, and narcotics, and you'll see the actual representations of each, if they how they break down to how they're interacting with our repeat offender issues. Weapons charges, 21% of those that are arrested for weapons violations, again, repeat violations. Then violent crimes, which is armed robberies, aggravated assaults, we're seeing those. Property crimes, of course, 29%. That's always been the highest number of those repeat offenders, those that we have an opportunity of offering diversions for. If that victim does not want to prosecute, we try to make that happen. But in most of those cases, we have someone who chooses to prosecute. And then that narcotics location where there's that person who's violating over and over again for generally the lower level of narcotics issues. The challenge is, you see the average age of those arrestees are about 47 years of age. And out of those 47, the average number of times that they've been arrested is 25. And those are staggering numbers. Then the felony convictions as well. That's the average number when we look across the board at those repeat offenders. They've been arrested at least 5 times, but on felony convictions only. The other one were misdemeanors down in the 25%. So, as we look at recruitment, so we have been doing what I believe is just a fantastic job with our recruitment unit. They have been working tirelessly to go out and really and truly find the right locations and have recruiting events going forward to ensure that we're able to attract the number of people or the right people that we need for the city of Atlanta. And so right now, as we look compared to 2021, this time we only had 11 people hired, but as of the 24th, we were up to 44 year to date already. One of the great things that we had, I think we had a pretty decent number of media coverage over it, which was the recruitment efforts that we had at Lenox Mall. They were great partners, and we certainly appreciated them opening the mall and allowing us to come up and have that event there. I believe we've netted somewhere around about 74 applicants from Lenox Mall. Additionally, we also partnered with Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, and they had a hiring event where we also put a location out there, and we were able to attract 26 applicants from that location. So from just those two recent ones, we've been able to get 100 applicants, and so we're certainly thankful for the way that our recruitment has been going. We're going to continue to stay on top of it. Some of the good things that we see coming forward is there's a lot of other events that we have coming up that will give us, we're hopeful that we'll have the same bang for the buck. We already have right now waiting in line for the start of the next academy class. We have about 65 people that we're ready right now that we call Class 0 waiting to get in. That next class we anticipate starting 28 individuals in Class 275 around April 28th. We'll come right behind there 3 weeks later, and we'll start an additional class May 19th. And that class we're still putting people in place, so we don't have a solid number on those. But certainly a lot of officers coming to the table. We have a good number that are in field training right now, and so we are hopeful and thankful that once we get those, we'll be able to put them on the street and really help our officers that are already out in the street doing what they're doing. As we look at attrition, resignations, we're at 21 versus 15, so a difference of 6 from this year to last year. Nothing that's really standing out. What we see oftentimes, there are a number of people who are getting out of law enforcement. We're always looking to try to see where they're going so we can see how we fill that gap. Same thing with retirements. One of the challenges we have with retirements, and we can't affect that number to an extent, when we have a large number of hirings after a certain point in time, we know that perhaps if they stay the length 30 years later, we're going to have a large number of retirements. So we're kind of in that phase of dealing with that one. But to the extent that they qualify and we have the recapture positions available, if there's a critical need, then we try to see if we could keep them for those locations. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any specific questions?
Thank you, Deputy Chief. First, I'd like to recognize we've been joined by our colleague, Michael Julian Bond. My questions, one on your COBRA report page, since when and why is, and I didn't catch this on previous ones I've seen, but why is robbery under a property crime?
So the thought process, once upon a time, it was crimes against persons many, many years ago, before we disbanded central investigations way back when. The thought process is for them because they're after the actual property itself as opposed to the actual assault. Their original intent is to take the property from the person, although they're taking it with force. So that's what that difference is.
So is that something that you all have set in place, or does that come from the FBI classification?
I'd have to go back and really look and see if there was anything that we could do differently based on, I don't believe that the FBI actually classifies either or, but I'll go back and look at that with with Chief Hampton to see how they were able to determine how they wanted to place that particular unit. The good thing is the operational piece to it is no difference. It's just where we classify it for that crime category.
Looking at that same chart and going to the next one, an almost 50% increase in homicides. And flipping to the next page, Zone 1 and Zone 3 kind of have a number more than others, and that increase could almost be attributed to those two zones differing from the other ones. So what extra resources is APD, including your division, field operations, giving to Zone 1 and Zone 3 to hopefully address those large increases?
Correct. So what we have done for recently, we've just created another unit to try to help with some of the violent crimes in all crime categories, actually. Our FOD anti-crime unit. And with that unit, we've actually partnered with Fulton County SO with their crime suppression team, as well as the Georgia State Patrol. And when we're able to deploy them, our goal is to deploy that unit 4 times a day based off the actual crime trends of Wednesday through Saturday night. That's where we see the most of our violence. So they've been successful thus far, but we oftentimes have to also pull in our Titan units. They're out there doing the same exact thing in those other areas. So when we deploy all of those resources together in a way that they're not overlapping each other, but really getting out there into the streets and the neighborhoods and making those critical stops, we often will see decreases, and that's our hope that we can drive forward for the rest of the year, because the anti-crime unit has only been out there for probably about 6 weeks now, so we're hopeful that we can change that. The Zone 3 numbers, we know those were some of the ones that we were really and truly looking at to see if they had the gang ties. We've had units out there in the area. Some of the challenges, quite frankly, as you look at it, the Atlanta Fair, we had that incident just here recently. There were some 30-odd police officers that were over in the footprint, but yet and still, we still had 3 people to get shot right in the midst of police being a block away and even right in between there. So I think the other part will be is we'll have to rely on those other entities to really and truly get out there and help us from a community standpoint to really and truly change the nature and how people are thinking and what they choose to do with their lives.
Thank you. And you mentioned we've called it the anti-crime unit within FOD. What is, in the partnership there, what is the level of participation currently with the Sheriff's Office and Georgia State Patrol in that unit?
They have committed resources and matched what we have put out there. Here recently, the Fulton County Sheriff Department did bring a couple additional people on to help on that one. So we are really and truly thankful for those partnerships. They have been great when we can get them out there and work alongside of our Phoenix unit. The other thing that we've also done is looked at our SWAT units when they're out, when they're not doing training, when they're not doing other tactical issues, then we will also bring them out for a level of patrol, partly in those violent areas, so that when we see these shootings and different things going on, that they'll be beneficial for us to help us, even if it's something as simple as having some type of weapon that we need to make clear, whatever the case may be. They have the expertise to deal with those issues. So we try to bring everybody to the table and ensure that they're in the right places fighting those crime numbers.
And staying on the topic of partnerships, but here internally at the city, one thing that stuck out to me at their presentation in corrections was the level of inmates versus their staffing. So how is corrections assisting APD with, running buses or doing transports, things like that?
Yes, to the extent when they have their manpower, and they have committed to at least 3 days a week for us, where they'll come out and they'll assign someone to our detail and run those wagon calls for us. It's been a tremendous help because they're able to help us with the city runs as well as the county runs. It keeps our officers in service and on the streets and able to patrol. The other part to it is they've been able to step up with that same detail to keep us from having to sit in the hospitals. And ultimately what we want to do is ensure that our officers are as productive as they can as far as being present in our neighborhoods and really and truly just wanting to be in the right places at the right time. So the city corrections has been a great help to us. We're thankful to Chief Dancy for that assistance.
And then one more comment and one more question, and I'll turn over to my colleagues here. Looking forward tomorrow with the ribbon cutting of opening that repeat offender tracking unit in partnership with Fulton County Sheriff's Office and DA Willis. What is APD's commitment to that unit?
So we will, like we've already been doing, we will marry and grow our repeat offender unit to work close hand in hand with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. We have about 2 people in my office that are constantly looking at every arrest, looking at it and ensuring that we can really and truly highlight those cases so that we can ensure that they don't fall through the cracks, to share that information with the District Attorney's Office so that we can put the appropriate charges on them where needed. So we anticipate that unit growing and working closer and more hand in hand with the district attorney's office. It'll be a benefit to us all.
Thank you for that. On the last slide, on the resignations, which you mentioned are up, does APD perform exit interviews to gather, the reasons why those departures are taking place?
So yes, we do. Once someone's leaving, we do have an opportunity. It's voluntary for them to have a sit down with us to see what's going on, why they are choosing to leave, and if they are indeed leaving, where they're going. We've just put into a place to have an officer that as soon as someone puts in a retirement or a resignation letter, that they will go over there, a retention officer. And so right now it's being served by Lieutenant Wessels. Once we get that letter, we immediately forward it to that retention officer to ensure that they have a sit down with that person to really and truly look at it. If we can keep them, great, but if not, let's find out exactly what it is, because if it's something internal that we're doing, we want to be able to address it and make it right so that we don't have those issues going forward. So far it's been pretty good for us.
All right, thank you for that and answering all those questions. First committee member with question is Councilmember Waits.
Yes, sir, I don't have a question. Just wanted to take a moment to commend the Atlanta APD leadership, Fulton County, and the Georgia State Patrol for the robust stealth presence over the weekend. I believe this sends a strong message to bad apples that we're taking serious the concerns of citizens, and certainly that we want to send a message to those bad apples who will not comply. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, Councilmember Bond, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Deputy Chief Peak, for your presentation. Just a couple of questions. One, just always have to ask, is there an update on the effort to have police officers in our parks, in the partnership with Parks and Recreation? Where does that stand? Have you all been able to recruit more retired officers, or are you looking at retaining or requiring the services of other sworn personnel that share jurisdiction with Atlanta?
So where we are right now with it, we are still working on it, and so we're in a policy standpoint right now trying to ensure that we have that policy right so that we can get the recapture. So one of the challenges with the early recapture part, we did not have the same interest, but what we wanted to do was look at the officers that we very well could be losing out on, who may not have retired with 30 years, but they have retired and still have a desire to work in law enforcement to an extent, but not full-time, creating those part-time positions. And so right now, the Chief of Staff, Major Webster, she's actually solidifying the policy as to what we'll do for as far as requirements and getting that over to the Department of Law so that we can get a nod on it and get some faster traction with it.
Did you ask her to send the report to the committee of the status? Because when we passed the legislation back in May of 2021, and we're told by the Deputy Chief Coit at the time, at the end of the summer, that it would be up by January. And we're now, as of next Wednesday, approaching a major national holiday, National Michael Julian Bond Day on April the 6th. So it's been almost a year, since council's acted on this policy, and it doesn't seem like it would take this much. And of course, citizens are continuing to use the park. They're continuing to feel threatened, particularly those at the Cascade Nature Preserve, those senior ladies that walk, because they want somebody to be there. And I know that during that ensuing time, many representatives from APD have constantly said, and we're reassured by what they said, that of course, as zone commanders want to assign people to kind of drive through the parks to kind of bolster a presence, but the whole idea and concept of this is that so that they wouldn't have to do that, right? So
I understand.
That we'd have somebody there that can't be pulled away, on another emergency or another call, that we'd have a continuing presence there.
Right. I certainly understand, and I'm not certain on the time frame, but I'll follow up with that. What I will say is that the zone commanders, although they very well may not want to put those extra resources, they've all been willing, and so they are having officers go in and make those patrols in there. And then the other part to it is looking at our mounted patrols and other entities that we have within the department. Everyone has a focus on our parks to ensure that we don't have any additional issues. It's been relatively good thus far, but it does not mean that we can't do what we need to do to add those additional people in there so that we know that there will be someone there. So I promise you that they are working on it, and I'll get an update to see where we are, how long, what that new projection looks like once we can get everything cleared and we know that we have a good policy in place that we can bring them back and everybody will be safe and we can get them processed in and put them deployed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then the part two of my questions is, before last night's famous slap, last week there was another slap that kind of went around on social media at our airport at one of the gates, where a passenger who had been asked, I guess, to step off of a plane came back and punched one of the gate attendants. And the question arose is, why wasn't there an officer immediately, within that terminal? And as it was explained to me, is that the officer kind of floats on an outside vehicle so that he could, if there's an emergency, they can get the Concourse B from C more quickly. But I think it took about 8 minutes for the officer to get there. Is there any consideration or reconsideration, given the shortages that we have, to a better way to deploy or an alternative way to deploy officers between those terminals?
Right. So, and that is a challenge with the resources. What I'll say is that generally what happens at our airport is they'll have a rover who will hit each concourse and spend some time, as much as they can, on each one of them. Even with that, it's really and truly challenging, and they have not ever staffed the actual people on every concourse. Quite frankly, the concourses are the safest places for the airport because we know there are no weapons once they get inside the SIDA area, the secured area. But with that being said, what we'll hopefully be able to do, the same policy that we're dealing with the parks, we're also doing an enhancement for the airport as well. So we anticipate bringing some additional people to the airport so that we've recently given them a few already, but we want to try to bring some additional people to the airport so that they can really and truly have an even faster response, or if they have the availability moving forward to actually put people out on the concourses. But historically, those have been the places where you've had very few incidents, and in this particular case, I believe the plane had taxied out to the runway and they turned around and brought it back. So the other piece is ensuring that we communicate with Delta, so on that trip back, we should have had a prior notification that there was someone unruly so that we could already have people responding back just as the airplane was taxiing back as well. And those would be some of the things that we'll really and truly work closely with Major Collier to ensure that we are meeting with Delta and all of the other Southwest, because I believe it was on this particular one, but the meeting with all of the airlines at the managers' meetings so that we can share those best practices and we can work together to ensure that we can do better.
So you're already engaged in getting the, recaptured officers recruited to be out there at the airport. That's
correct. Correct.
Okay.
We're working with that. The same with the parks we're doing with the airport.
Will they patrol in much the same manner?
They would generally, with the airport, you have your patrols that are in your vehicles, but you also have people on foot that are within the ARs, within the airport and moving around so that they can do things on foot. Whether it be trained, whether it be walking concourse to concourse, we also have the bikes, the trek bikes and different things that they can utilize to try to get from point A to point B quicker.
Okay. All right. Well, I would appreciate that. Have you all talked to, I know that Spirit Airlines hires off-duty APD officers. Has there been any conversation about perhaps asking some of these other airlines, you said it was Southwest where the incident took place, that perhaps they might hire an off-duty officer?
So to my knowledge, and I'd have to go back and check, Delta and if Spirit was one of the ones, which I wasn't aware of recently, but Delta has really been the only one. But what the other airlines have historically done, they've hired specifically for baggage thefts. And so they'll have people in those areas ensuring that the right people are picking up the right bags and leaving. Those were some of the crime challenges that they had once upon a time. But we can have that conversation in the station managers' meetings and see if they're willing. And if so, then they can utilize off-duty, which is not an issue. We just got to see if they're willing to spend the money to do it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
GP.
Thank you.
Next
I yield, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Bond. Next is Councilmember Amos.
Deputy Chief Peake, how you doing? Actually, our chairman hit on the subject of Zone 1 and Zone 3 and what additional resources. So I was glad to hear there will be and are some being deployed. And also, I'm also glad to hear that you named people that was not law enforcement to actually begin to partner with you as well. It's ironic, we actually have our first West Side Public Safety Task Force meeting on tomorrow. And along with all of the law enforcement agencies that are listed, we actually put some boots on the ground, as you say, community service people that's working with our children and our youth every day on that committee. But as far as your law enforcement side, it was probably oversight, but I failed to hear Atlanta Public Schools PD, MARTA PD, and the schools from the Atlanta University Center, which may be able to help you broaden your net as you and all the rest of the agencies are out there as well. So definitely reach out to them. But also seen on that slide of homicides, it was the clubs and the nuisance around that. As you begin to do your work, and I think I see someone from the administration here, make sure you loop in whatever the concept is with the nightlife manager concept and the violence reduction officer. I mean, it's time for us to have some robust conversations and including everyone in, because I think everybody in this room know that law enforcement issues cannot only be solved by law enforcement. So especially when you're talking about most of your things so through escalating situations. So with those office. And then I do have one issue with housing code that I know you can take back to your other departments, but it may also be a legal question as well. There's a apartment complex in Dixie Hills. It was the Verbena Street apartment complex. It sits on Verbena and Shirley Street. And it has sat half torn down for a year or so now. And the only answer we've been able to get is in the courts. The community is demanding more. I can't go back to them and say it's in the courts. So can someone to check that out? And if it is a legal situation, send it to me an email or get someone from the office to communicate with me.
Absolutely. And we have our Director Daphne Talley that's in the office will be able to, in the house now, will be able to give that part at her presentation. And you're absolutely right with the Atlanta Public Schools Police. We're working closely with them, MARTA, as well as AUC. We're meeting with them and just actually had a briefing as they've been looking and struggling with the threats that have been made across the country. They have not been excluded, and so Major Moorman in Zone 1 has been instrumental in working closely with them, ensuring that they get the resources that they need to make AUC safe, but at the same point, working with the AFC to see if we can get them 500 feet off campus as well to help with visibility. And so right now, the crime numbers in those areas are looking pretty decent, but we understand that it's getting hot, so we got a pretty good plan for spring break and preparing to make the final revisions to our summer plan so that we'll have a good movement moving forward throughout the summer months.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Overstreet.
Thanks, Chair Hillis. Deputy Chief Peake, thanks so much for your presentation today. I know that it can't be easy to always come bearing the bad news about what's happening in public safety, but I think these conversations are imperative to us getting on the other side of it, so I do appreciate it. I also appreciate the actual gang talk, wording, conversations that we're now having, because if we don't, then it will continue to rule, and I think that we're headed in the right direction with that, and I've seen that more in just 2022. So just want to commend you on actually using those words, and messaging is important, so I appreciate that. Also want to talk about something that I thought about when you were speaking with Councilmember Bond. In last week in the community, I noticed that we had a couple bicycle cops, police officers on Campbellton Road, which made me so happy. I mean, I've been asking for that for a while. So what I'd like to do now is, it's for several reasons. Let me back up a second. For several reasons, because when you see that, then you know that they're interacting with the community, and it deters crime, as well as bring about a collaboration and a cooperativeness that's necessary in the communities. It doesn't look the same as a police car with blue lights. It looks like I'm here for you. If you need me, just stop me. We can, chat about anything that you've seen or you've heard or that you don't understand. And that's extremely important in a community, and that's the kind of police partnering that I'm talking about, or the community policing that I've been talking about. I really like seeing that. Only thing is, they literally were loading those bikes into the back of like a paddy wagon at the end of their ride, which I'm like, I know we have specific vehicles for that. If not, then we need to have a conversation, because it needs to be allocated. Like, that should be a budget conversation, which is coming up. I am more than happy to advocate for the proper vessels that we need in order to house the bikes, have more bikes. They also need the proper uniform, because they didn't have on coordinated uniforms, and instead of them being black, I think they should be almost fluorescent. So I don't know what the plans are with that for Campbellton Road, or anywhere for that matter, for the whole city. But I would like to have like 10 times more than those, and the proper uniforms, and the vehicles that they need to carry the bikes properly. Right. So thanks for the work that you're doing. I know that the numbers aren't what you'd like them to be right now, and me either. But I do think that, we're inching at figuring out how to fix a whole lot of different things at the same time. And that's not easy, and people may not know how hard it is, but it seems that we're doing the work to get it done.
Well, thank you so much for the encouragement on that one. Our goal is to have bike units in every zone. We've already implemented it in 3 zones so far, and so the goal is to go all 6. So thank you for the support, because we'll certainly look at what we can do. Bike uniforms, there is a specific uniform. In fact, we're really and truly trying to ensure that department-wide that we take another look at our uniforms and ensure that everybody looks the same, and that, we'll have uniformity throughout. So take that to heart, and we'll certainly try to put it all into play as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, Councilmember Boone.
Mr. Chair, Major Peak, thank you for that wonderful presentation, and for all of the great work that is going on in Southwest Atlanta. We do see a big difference up and down ML King Jr. Drive and Fairburn Road, so thank you for that. Will we be hearing from code enforcement today?
Yes.
Okay. Who is the major over code enforcement at this time?
So Major Mitchell was assigned to code enforcement, and he works closely with Daphne. I call you Daphne. I forgot her last name just now. Tally. Thank you, Miss Tally. So, yes, they work as a partnership over there.
Okay. We'll be hearing from them next. When will we hear from code enforcement?
Do you have specific questions? Or?
Well, I do have a couple of questions, but I can just hold until they get ready to do a presentation.
They're not on the presentation schedule today, but I can have
Okay.
Deputy Director Talley come up and answer some questions if.
Well, no, I really don't have a question, just wanting to say that when an elected official calls a city employee, when you work for the city of Atlanta, and an elected official picks up the phone, actually calls and asks for information about specific properties that are on the in-rim and demolition list, the city employee that is in leadership position should try their best to get a response to that elected official, and there are things that can be done. If an elected official picks up the phone and asks someone about a specific property that is on the list, there are things that can be done, such as legislation that can be put in. And also, there's a department called the Inspector General. So when a city employee that is in a leadership position, last public safety meeting, there were up to 8 to 10 complaints regarding our in-rim process and the demolition and the cold efforts towards the citizens in this city. It was a very, very, very negative response given to these citizens. So please let your staff know that when elected officials call that represent thousands of people in the city of Atlanta call, to be respectful to the citizens in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Boone. And if I could, if we get an opportunity, I'd love to have a conversation afterwards, and we'll ensure that whatever you need, we'll get squared away and then address those other issues. So thank you for your help and your concern. So we'll make that right for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? All right. Thank you, Deputy Chief Peake. Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Deputy Chief Peake. If you can just relate again to the homicide unit, they seem to be, well, they are superlative in getting a lot of these cases resolved. And I know that sometimes it can be a morbid subject, but it is great for those who have suffered and have family members who have been killed, like myself. I really appreciate the work that they do and the quick cleanup rate that they have in their cases. I know that they are leading in the country. Really, they're above the national average.
Absolutely.
And so they just. I saw on the news this past weekend that they closed out yet another case, another unfortunate case. We don't want people murdered in our city, but they do an effective job of bringing those guilty persons or accused guilty persons to justice. So just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure I let Chief Hampton know and we can push it down. I agree with you. I believe we have the best homicide unit in the country, and they take it seriously when they get those calls, and they work tirelessly until they can bring them to a successful conclusion. If it's as successful as it can be, unfortunately, we're having a loss of life, but I'll be sure to share it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, very quickly, I live in the District 12 community, and for whatever reason, I see a number of law enforcement official vehicles that are not within the city of Atlanta. And so offline, I'd like to chat about what are our efforts regarding allowing officers to take vehicles home. I think that presence will go a long way throughout the city.
So, yes, ma'am, we have actually looked, and there have been several studies done. Quite frankly, I believe it gets down to a part of it's a dollar amount because of the size of our agency. It's a relatively good lift to deploy take-home units to all of our officers, particularly focusing with the ones that are inside the city. I think the last number, if I can recall, we were somewhere around about 225 maybe officers that are living within the city. So that's something that we certainly support from council if that's the direction that we need to go. Right now, what we're really and truly doing is all that we can is to ensure that we get the vehicles that we have shopped and out so that we can keep our officers moving. believe we have right now. We've been working closely with the Department of Public Works to try to make sure we're meeting with the two Ford dealers. I believe at one point we had over 100 vehicles that were in the shop. So the last report I had, we're down to 90, so we're seeing some successes, and they're working, and so we're doing all that we can to ensure that we keep our fleet in its best condition as it is, but recognizing that as well, because our cars are running 24 hours a day, they tend not to last as long as the average patrol car in another jurisdiction that operates take-homes. We have to replenish them a lot more.
Councilmember Amos.
Just very quickly, I would be remiss not to say thank you to my colleague, Councilwoman Boone, because although I have sent several emails to code enforcement and they have been answered, it is a new spirit in the city to where everyone is doing a little extra, a little more to serve the citizens. And we understand we're just coming back from a pandemic. We understand we got to get our legs back up under us, but everybody is in full sprint mode. So if everyone could just work together to serve the citizens of the city of Atlanta, and there are some issues. I've been in this city long enough to know when code enforcement simply just did not work. So I'm glad to see NREM back up and going. I'm also glad to know that it's being funded now, because I remember those days as well. So it's just time for all of us to do something different and really serve the city of Atlanta. We got the right leadership in place to do so. But I'm glad that was brought up, because I thought it was only me feeling like I was not getting what I needed to give to the people that was asking for it, and that's the citizens of Atlanta. But I know that will change. I know we will all do better, including myself, and I'm just say thank you, and wherever I can do to help you and the staff and everyone else, just let me know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And please know that regardless to where it falls, if ever you need anything and you're having any issues, this is not specific to any particular unit, but we represent the Atlanta Police Department, so it matters not what division it is. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to assist in getting you whatever you need. We're here. We're all running 100 miles an hour, but thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Peake.
Thank you.
Two more presentations. Next up is the Department of Law quarterly update. We have our City Attorney, Ms. Nina Hickson.
I'm not well coordinated, so I need somebody changing the slides for me. This is Mayshire Bailey, who's Director of Finance in the Law Department. So, good afternoon. I am pleased today to have an opportunity to share with you the activities of the Department of Law. We didn't get to do a report last quarter, and so this particular report is going to cover the last quarter as well as the current quarter. So we'll be reporting on our activities since September 13th, 2021. We will do a brief overview, our accomplishments, division accomplishments, revenue recovery, total claims and settlement payments, as well as outside counsel spending to date. So if we can move to page 5. Actually, it looks like we skipped something. There we go. I wanted to sort of lay a foundation, given that there were some new members to the committee. So I put the citation for the responsibility of the city attorney as found in the code. So I've highlighted that. I also wanted to make you aware that our staff has 58 attorneys, 41 non-attorneys. Currently, we are operating with 11 vacancies. Our budget in total is approximately $21 million, but it's divided into 3 funds: the general fund, the aviation fund, and the watershed fund. And what's important to know about that is with aviation and watershed, we are not able to use those funds to fund activities which are not related to either the airport or the Department of Watershed Management. So all the other activities fall under the general fund. Thank you, Mayshire. In terms of accomplishments, I'd like to point out a few things that we're particularly proud of. Supervisory Senior Attorney Amber Robinson was appointed to the Municipal Market Board of Directors, and she was confirmed by council in November. We know that she'll bring good service to that particular board as she does every day in her job. We've had an attorney, Jaquita Parks, who is appointed by the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys as chair of the Judicial and Public Office Academy. Next, we've got attorney Joshua Foster, who was selected to the State Bar of Georgia's Labor and Employment Section's Mentorship Academy. And then finally, Michael Winter, who was a mentee with the American Bar Association section of Litigation Minority Trial Lawyers. You can go to the next page. Instead of giving you highlights of cases, which we tend to do in executive session if they're pending, we wanted to give you some of the metrics as relates to the litigation division. So currently with the staff of 21 members, and that's 12 attorneys, 9 non-attorneys, the litigation division currently has a total of 1,159 open matters. 1,023 of these matters are being handled in-house, with 136 being farmed out to outside counsel. Next, we'll highlight our business services division, which is comprised of our work related to contracts, real estate, and land use. So among the activities of the contracts portion, involved at the drafting, review, and negotiation of the following legislation on behalf of AIM, the Department of Finance, and the Police Department, authorizing the renewal of a contract with Milner Technology, Unisearch Image Directive System. This system is used for the management of documentary evidence required for the investigation and prosecution of crimes. They've also worked on task order agreements with multiple construction and general service vendors in support of the Department of Enterprise Assets job order contracting program, totaling more than $10 million. There was a key $45 million construction contract modification on behalf of the Department of Education for Cargo 2A and 2B expansion and site preparation for approximately 550,000 square feet at the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Another contract of interest worked on by this group was a $55 million service contract on behalf of Watershed Management for the design and construction of the Payton Center that will include an auditorium, training center, maintenance shop, fueling station, and equipment warehouse. It will consolidate the functions of various watershed management divisions and hopefully enhance the efficiency of sewer operations, improve our storage capabilities, and enhance staff training. Another critical contract for the Department of Watershed involved maintenance service for the permeable interlocking concrete pavement roads that you see in Peoplestown and Mechanicsville. They look like bricks, but they are permeable, allowing for the absorption of water that, based on the flooding that goes on over there. And so we did a contract for continued maintenance on those bricks. Another contract had to do with contract management solution called Ask Reply that monitors the compliance of programs, laws, regulations, and streamlines data gathering, tracking, and reporting. This was done for the Office of Contract Compliance, which allows it to do better compliance monitoring and data gathering with regard to the city's EBO, Small Business Opportunity, Federal Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, and Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Enterprise programs. Additional service agreement with Six Pitch on behalf of the Department of City Planning to prepare capital improvement plan to consider both the city's physical infrastructure and the accommodation of anticipated growth. The next one you're familiar with, we had to do emergency contracts to bring on workers when we were running low with attendance based on COVID-19. We've also done a contract to hire a project manager to assist APD's transition to their new computer-aided dispatch program, advertising contracts for the Department of Aviation, as well as a critical contract for the Fire Training Center operation and maintenance at the airport. There was also a contract done on behalf of the Department of Aviation. It's for a secret shopping program, which allows the department to do compliance checks on the operations of the concessionaires out at the airport. And there was also a contract done on behalf of the Human Resources Department for actuarial services related to the analysis of the city's pension and insurance benefits. We did a similar contract amendments for Department of Risk Management for 2 vendors to provide a full range of insurance, brokerage, and consulting services. And we did service contracts with 3 different vendors on behalf of the Department of Parks and Rec for after-school programming, including home work assistance, academic enrichment, and other extracurricular activities, such as visual and performing arts. And so if you go to page 17, these are the metrics for the Business Service Division. Between July 1st and December of 2021, that was the last quarter, there were 75 solicitation reviews, 62 legislation reviews, 87 advice and counsel matters, 267 contract reviews and drafting, and 13 handlings of contract disputes. The next division is our real estate division, which worked with the Department of Planning in making sure that the comprehensive development plan was renewed. It has to be done every 5 years, and so they were able to work with the department to meet that deadline. The next one is a case that the city won. It was a case, what we informally call Tokyo Valentino, but it was where the owners of Tokyo Valentino challenged the adult entertainment ordinance. The lower court found that the city had a proper ordinance. It was not unconstitutional, and the 11th Circuit upheld that particular finding, so we can continue taking enforcement actions under that particular ordinance. Next page. The real estate team negotiated and closed on 3 major leases at the airport: the Delta Airlines Technical Operations Center, the Majestic Hotel Project, and the Delta Fuel Farm. And as it relates to the Gulch, the real estate team was involved in a number of the transactions, including preparation and negotiation of the land swap agreement, where the city acquired 160 Trinity, 185 Peachtree, and 175 Spring, and conveyed to CIM, the project developer, the warehouse located at 72 Marietta Street. There's negotiations of the parking agreement for the Department of Watershed Management, and a lease agreement for use of warehouse space by the Department of Watershed Management. There are also several easements for water and sewer pipelines, as well as the review and preparation of over 23 title-related exhibits for the deal. So again, the metrics just generally from July 1st, the last quarter, there have been 84 legislative items handled, 73 easements and encroachments, and 38 leases. The next department is Municipal Government, which falls under Business Services. They were formerly known as Public Safety, Legislation, and Special Initiatives, but we've collapsed them into Municipal Government. We continue to work with the committee that's dealing with nuisance properties, and so we work on that particular working group team, which meets regularly to carry out the initiatives to attempt to deal with properties that are nuisance properties. This particular group also worked in terms of amending the alcohol code in 2021. Next page, the ground lease agreement was drafted regarding the Key Road property and the upcoming training center. The next page, the team also supported the Executive Office and Department of Corrections legislation with an intergovernmental agreement between the city and Fulton County for the creation of the Center of Diversion Services within a portion of the former ACDC. Under the Executive Office, the activities included the legislation for the Mayors for a Guaranteed Income Pilot Program, which is a program of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and Atlanta is taking part in that. The next page, the Mayor's Child Savings Account Program, as well as the completion of the 2021 Disparity Study, which is a study which has to be done every few years to support the city's Equal Business Opportunity Program. So we did. The results indicated that we've made some improvement in reducing the underutilization of minority and women-owned businesses, but there's still room for a lot more. Okay. Finance, again, the Gulch project was a key activity, as well as the issuance and drafting of legislation authorizing general obligation bonds in the amount of $3.4 million and the refunding of general obligation bonds in the amount of $188 million. Operations, the Labor and Employment Group provided assistance to the Department of Procurement in drafting a policy to encourage employees to further their professional growth by seeking certifications after they joined the department. As a result, the Labor and Employment revised the legislation and drafted a policy that provided practical guidance for complying with the certification process. The next highlighted activity was training that was provided on the city's attendance policy. There was one particular department that came indicating they were having a problem with the abuse of FMLA as well as annual leave. And so instead of just dealing with that department, the Labor and Employment Group provided training and guidelines to help managers manage attendance appropriately and consistently. Under watershed, we did some code amendments dealing with the adjustment of customer water and sewer bills, and we assisted in the resolution of a state regulatory matter involving a dam under a city road, allowing for dam improvements to be made in order to provide improved flood protection for that local community. So under watershed, the metrics include 73 legislative items being reviewed, participated in 137 water and sewer appeals board cases, and participated in 56 cases involving the riparian buffer technical panel. Under public works, the work included creation of a permit for right-of-way improvements for the Tactical Urbanism Program, counsel clients on the use of T-SPLOST and Renew Atlanta funds, provided code interpretations regarding the installation of traffic calming devices, delivered ongoing advice to the parking team portion of DLT, assistance to in-house and outside counsel in defense of several lawsuits against the city related to public right-of-ways, motor vehicle accidents, and personal injuries, and administered legal advice to internal and external clients regarding 2 large-scale projects which required the abandonment of cities' right-of-ways. Also provided and reviewed and revised agreements regarding the Broad Street Boardwalk with the Atlanta Downtown Improvement District. We revised existing CID cooperative agreements to expand CID authority to procure construction and design independently, and developed a standard template for construction and installation and maintenance of community-sponsored projects within the city's right-of-way. Legislatively, that group reviewed and finalized over 55 legislative items, and which included the Light Up the Night, which is the 10,000 Lights program with Georgia Power, as well as the acceptance of $2.6 million in funds from the Georgia Department of Transportation in support of the Peachtree Road Corridor Project Phase 3. Finally, the department provided citywide training on compliance with SAVE, as well as trainings on state and local law governing impact fees. The Aviation Department and Chief Transparency Officer offered Open Records Act training for the Department of Aviation, provided legal support and review for the acceptance of 2 new FAA grants offered through the American Rescue Plan, which totaled $370 million. The department also supported the Department of Education by drafting amendments and legislation to revise the pricing of concessions items from street pricing plus 10% to street pricing plus 15%. They also engaged in the review of legislation, looked at the merits of an ACDBE program and an issue regarding an operator who had graduated out of the program but wanted to still be considered under that program, and actually worked through a long-standing tax dispute together with the department to resolve the amount of taxes owed to College Park regarding the building commonly referred to as the Sheraton Hotel. So page 44, you'll see the metrics in total between, in that last quarter, they had a number of 129 requests for legal assistance, including trademark research, litigation hold letters, and record retention matters. Moving to revenue recovery, the law department, between July 1st and December 31st, received 130 quiet titles and interpleader petitions. In response, we filed claims and recouped $223,146 for water bills, property taxes, and other liens. We also assisted the watershed division in the recovery of $1,363 for a past due water sewer bill associated with the multifamily residential building. The Transportation, Public Works, and SAVE team recovered $19,000 in telecom franchise fees for underpayments that have been outstanding since 2019. And the real estate group has secured 120 tax parcels with a total tax value of approximately $4 million and has recovered $325,000 in the satisfaction of demolition liens. In terms of our claims, at the end of the calendar year, quarters 1 and 2, we had a total of 803 pending claims. We received 315 new claims between July and December, which is an average of 53 new ones per month, and we've resolved 334 claims during the past quarter. This page outlines the itemized claims and settlement payments by department. We can go to the next page. And then we have a consolidated report indicating that we had litigation cases where the demand was $85,701,566, which we were able to settle in a total amount of $21,280. And in terms of claims, we had claims totaling $1,279,000. We were able to resolve those at an amount of $105,690. And finally, we'll go to the outside counsel spending report for fiscal year 21 July through March. Fiscal year 22 July through March. The total spending has been $4,664,028. In terms of the enterprise funds, the aviation fund, we are down 16%. Watershed, we are down 10%, but the general fund is up 14%. And there was there were a number of outsourced matters. There also was payment for one-time expenses such as the disparity study, the social unrest cases, and 2 class action lawsuits that are being handled on behalf of the city. So that concludes my quarterly report. Are there questions?
Thank you, Ms. Hickson. Colleagues, questions for our city attorney? Councilmember Boone.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Just wanting to say that we really appreciate the weekend work that you and your staff have provided for those citizens that have been in need of very, very quick responses from you all. It's not just the big things in life that matter, but when you all actually talk to citizens, and just want to thank your staff for all that they've been doing, and give them, we always hear the bad things about law and the bad things about government. You all have really provided a positive experience in a lot of matters, and we do understand that you all are doing deep dives in those constituent complaints that we have brought to your attention. So again, thank you for caring about the least of these in the government.
Thank you for your comments, and I'd like to again commend my staff. They are very hardworking and very dedicated to the city, and I'm very proud to lead that group.
Councilmember Boone, anyone else? All right, thank you so much, Ms. Hickson.
You're welcome.
All right, our final presentation is the Center for Diversion and Services update. We have Benjamin Kajardi, Senior Policy Advisor on Justice Reform. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Council members. Benjamin Kajardi, Senior Policy Advisor, working on some of our justice-related initiatives in the Mayor's office, one of them being the Center for Diversion and Services. So I think we're going to pull up the presentation. Sure. Great, thank you. So as I said, I'm going to provide a brief 10 to 15 minute update on the Center for Diversion and Services. So this is a really important project that represents a collaboration and partnership between the city and county. As this body knows, in November you passed the intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County to establish and share the funding commitment to this. And I'm sure this is the Atlanta City Detention Center, as you all know, and this is where part of the building will be utilized for the Diversion Center. And this project is also important because it represents an alternative to arrest and jail, and it is a 24/7 resource for the APD as a drop-off point. So before I dive into some of the updates, I just want to take a step back and provide a little refresh about what the sort of model or approach is with the Diversion Center. And so as I said, it's going to be a 24/7 law enforcement drop-off point, so essentially a somewhere to go. And it's going to be offering co-located services for folks that are experiencing concerns related to mental health, poverty, homelessness, and substance use. And so with the Diversion Center, we will prioritize a peer-led model, meaning that individuals who are coming into the Diversion Center will be greeted by peers and individuals with lived experience. So they will work with the Diversion Center guests to identify what their needs are through an initial screening and assessment. And that'll be done in partnership with Grady and PAD staff. That's the Policing and Alternatives Diversion Initiative. And so they will conduct that initial assessment, and then they will develop a case management plan. They may provide some initial basic non-emergency medical care and some of the other amenities that you see here on the screen, which might be things like laundry, showers, and a safe place to sober up if needed. And as they're working on that case management, that might involve some short-term needs like transitional housing, but it might also involve longer-term needs like legal navigation or permanent supportive housing. And then two other points that I just wanted to make here, which is that the Policing Alternatives and Diversion Initiative PAD and Grady have been and will continue to be core partners in this project, and then we'll also be providing services on site at the Diversion Center once it opens up. And then finally, the Justice Policy Board was established as part of that intergovernmental agreement, which passed back in November. And that is essentially an intergovernmental multi-stakeholder group, which is tasked with overseeing the development and operations of the Diversion Center, along with expanding and strengthening similar resources and services throughout the city. And Councilmember Hillis is a co-chair of the board, along with Fulton County Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney. So just quickly, some of the goals for the Diversion Center. I know this is a lot on the slide, so I'm not going to walk through all of it in detail, but essentially want to provide, again, that alternative to arrest and jail, especially for those folks that are experiencing concerns related to those items noted there in number one. And then also moving toward a holistic person-centered approach to care that recognizes the reasons why individuals might end up in a space where they are having law enforcement contact. And also reducing the number of people who are arrested and enter into our city and county jails, and then preserving law enforcement and emergency response resources. And then strengthening the network of community service providers that we have in Metro Atlanta, and then also importantly, recognizing and acknowledging the continued harm that racism and other systems of oppression have on the communities that we hope to serve with this Diversion Center. So moving on, the Diversion Center, as I mentioned, will be located at 254 Peachtree Street, Southwest, the ACDC, and it will take about 8,000 square feet of empty space that is currently located in this southwest corner that you can see here highlighted in yellow. It will have a dedicated entry as well as a dedicated lane for law enforcement to drop off individuals, and it will be pre-charged, meaning these folks will not have been arrested, and it will be consent-based. And we believe that the Diversion Center has the potential to divert a little over 11,000 folks annually from ACDC and Fulton County Jail, as well as over 4,000 folks from Grady's emergency room and psychiatric ER. There's a couple of milestones today. I won't cover the IGA again, but I do want to mention we have some private funding, which we're grateful for, from the Georgia Power Foundation, along with Microsoft, which I'll mention in just a moment. And we also completed the conceptual flow design for the Diversion Center in December, and I'll show that on the next slide. But we also established a working agreement between the Department of Corrections and the Diversion Center, because they'll, of course, be sharing the same building, so we want to make sure that they're using those resources and knowing what to do in certain situations. And then the Justice Policy Board, which I mentioned, had its first quarterly meeting in January, and then Mayor Dickens introduced and passed legislation related to making sure that capital funding for the renovation is allocated, and then making sure that we have a collaborative procurement process to identify an operator for the Diversion Center once it's up and running. And then finally, we have a lot of great things that have happened in March, which, again, we have that Microsoft funding, which will be used for some of the architecture and engineer work. A group of city and county leaders and other stakeholders went on a visit to Tucson, Arizona about 2 weeks ago. I'll walk into some of the takeaways from that in just a moment. The Justice Policy Board held its Operations and Vision Committee meetings, and then we also have the great news, which is that Senator Warnock appropriated about $3 million specifically for the Diversion Center, and that's a very recent development, but one we're very grateful and thankful to his office for. And a little bit more on the design and construction, and this is the that's really where sort of the most intensive work will be occurring over the next approximately, I would say, 1 year. And so this is the conceptual design that I mentioned. This was completed in December. We completed it after a very collaborative process with City, County, PAD, Grady, and we also had some individuals there who represented some potential future guests at the Diversion Center. And then the design and construction, what I would just draw your attention here to is this timeline at the bottom of the screen, which shows that the concept design, again, was completed in December. And then actually this week on Friday, we're going to have our first meeting for the architecture and engineer process, which will take about 6 months and will be led by the firm Gresham Smith, which helped us complete the concept work back in December. And then if all goes according to plan, which we're confident it will, construction will start in October and it will take about 10 to 12 months. And we hope to eventually open the Diversion Center, we'll say around mid-year next year. And then just zooming out a little bit, so not focusing just on the design and construction updates, but here you can see some of the larger updates related to the project. And we're here obviously in the spring and summer, what's circled there in red, and so we're about to begin that architecture and engineering work. We're also very close to releasing and request for proposals for an organization that will manage the day-to-day operations of the Diversion Center in coordination with Grady and PAD. And then in the fall, we'll begin that construction work. We'll work to contract the operator. We'll have an agreement between some of the partners to the Diversion Center. And then obviously next year, we'll hope to finalize construction and open the Diversion Center. So I want to end with just a couple of slides on a really positive note, which is this, as you see here, a great group of city and county leaders, which included Councilmember Hillis, Councilmember Waits, Commissioner Abdul Rahman from the county, as well as PAD, Fulton County Superior Court, city leadership, Grady, our emergency 911 communications folks, and some of our Atlanta Police Department leadership. And when we were on that visit, we toured and had presentations and conversations with a number of different offices and units that they have there as related to their, we'll say, their crisis response or diversion ecosystem, which certainly serves as a good model for us. Not everything is replicable, but certainly many things that we can learn from. One of those was the Crisis Response Center, which was my first takeaway here. And this is essentially, it's a standalone unit, so it's not part of another building or facility, but it is essentially a larger version of what we hope to do with the Diversion Center. It's a bit more wide-ranging in what their focus and services are, but it certainly, again, provides a model and sort of a goal for what we can do across the city in the future. I also want to highlight here, I know some of our folks that are here went on the trip, did a tour with their emergency communication center, and were able to see that not only do they have a dedicated phone number for crisis response, but they also have a mobile response unit. And they have in their 911 communication center, they have co-located mental health clinicians who are able to triage calls that are coming in. So essentially diverting those calls that are not true, not necessarily needing a police or fire response, but might be better served with a mental health or some other kind of response. And the third bullet point here is that, and just continuing to sort of highlight opportunities where we can work with the county on this project and other related public safety or community wellness projects. And so they actually have a Department of Justice Services there that is funded by the county and does do a number of different projects related to justice, one of them being a pre-booking jail diversion modular. They have jail population reviews, a number of data, research and evaluation projects related to racial and ethnic disparities in their justice system. They also do warrant resolution, which we will do at our diversion center. And they have community-led justice-related initiatives as well. And then finally, here I'll just point out that one of the things that I think the group really took away and thought was a great opportunity for us to continue related conversations is the fact that while they do have, their police department does have units that are specialty response units, so they respond to situations where there might be mental health or substance use or homelessness issues involved. But I think their leadership, city, county, police, and behavioral health also realize that, you have to kind of take a look and see what works best for your city, for your jurisdiction, and they are also looking at some alternative approaches to responding to these types of concerns in the community, which might be civilian-led, and that would be something similar to what the Policing Alternatives and Diversion Initiative does here. And so, it's a great way for us to continue thinking about expanding those types of resources and services here in the city. And so that's all I'll share today. Certainly happy to answer any questions. And I know we have some folks here who went to Tucson, so happy to hear any takeaways that they have as well.
All right, thank you for that update on the Diversion Center. First, defer to my colleagues. Any questions, comments on the Diversion Center? All right. Well, I think this is a great project. Looking forward to it, and it was a very informative trip to Tucson as we looked at their diversion center. That again, they've been working on that for 20 years or so. So it's going to take some time to get up to that level, but this is a great first step here in Atlanta to get our diversion center up and running. Councilmember Overstreet.
I want to write down your name. I'm familiar with Moki and a couple others, but I want to make sure I spell your name right on my notes.
It's Benjamin Caharty, Cajarty. Thanks.
Thank you for your presentation.
Councilmember Waits.
Thank you. My computer has went on the blink. I just wanted to simply echo that the presentation in Tucson was wonderful. And one of the things that did strike me was that when we went on those visits to visit with the homeless community, I thought it was interesting that we were in unmarked vehicles. In fact, the law enforcement were dressed in plain clothes. And so I thought that went a long way to send a message that we are truly here to assist and help. And so I look forward to adopting some of those policies, hopefully here in the city of Atlanta. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you. And that concludes our presentations. We'll move on, to the consent agenda. Resolutions, claims with favorable and unfavorable recommendations. We have 4 favorable claims, and I will make a motion to accept those favorable claims. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open, Mr. Chair.
Wait says aye.
The vote is closed.
All right, there's 7 yeas and 0 nays. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Electing Councilmember Waits. 7 yeas, 0 nays. Those items are favorable. Claims with unfavorable recommendations, 5 through 36. I'll make a motion to adverse all those unfavorable items. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
Vote is open, Mr. Chair.
Waits is aye.
Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Those claims are adversed. Moving on to the regular agenda and items, ordinances for second read. We have 22-0-1228. Ms. Lindo.
Mr. Chair, this is an ordinance by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee amending the 2022 Intergovernmental Grant Fund budget, Department of Police, by subtracting from anticipations and appropriations and therefore closing out the grant in the amount of $272,886.73 for the 2017 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Award from the United States Department of Justice and for other purposes.
I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. The vote is closed, Mr. Chair.
Yes, the item is favorable. 7 yeas, 0 nays. Next item.
Next item, Mr. Chair, is item number 2 is 22-1229. This is an ordinance by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee amending the 2022 Intergovernmental Grant Fund Budget, Department of Police, by subtracting from anticipations and appropriations and therefore closing out the grant in the amount of $58,013.12 for the 2018 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. Award number listed herein from United States Department of Justice for the purpose of closing out the grant and for other purposes.
Motion to approve this item. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Overstreet. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. Next item.
Next item, Mr. Chair, is item number 3. This is 22-1223. This is an ordinance by Council Members Antonio Lewis, Andrea L. Boone, Michael Julian Bond, Marcy Collier Overstreet, Matt Westmoreland, Keisha Sean Waits, Byron Amos, and Jason Winston to temporarily suspend Section 35 and 36 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Appendix E, Atlanta Housing Code of 1987, Article 3, the Atlanta Housing Code, for a period of 60 days to impose a moratorium on the demolition of in-rem properties and to request the city auditor conduct an audit of all administrative in-rem processes, including internal and external communications, to ensure that the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances is based on municipal best practices regarding in-rem proceedings, to provide that the temporary suspension authorized hereby shall be effective from the date of the approval of this ordinance through May 31st, 2022, and for other purposes.
Right, and there's been a request from the author, Councilmember Lewis, to hold this item, so I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
All right, there's 5 yeas, 1 nay, 1 abstention. That item is favorable. Before we move on to the next item, we'll just say, there does need to be some discussion around code enforcement, particularly the in-rem process. So I am going to reach out to my colleagues. I would love to schedule a work session. I know we have recess coming up. I don't know if you all want to come in and have a work session during recess, but I'm certainly amicable if a majority of you all do. Otherwise, we can look to the first week that we return to have that work session specifically detailing the in-rem process within code enforcement and the process there. So, Councilmember Boone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, we are holding this piece of legislation, but to my colleagues, there is a sentence that calls for an audit of all administrative and interim processes, including internal and external communications, to ensure that the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances is based on municipal practices. Just to our city auditor, know that we are calling on them to look into this matter also.
Thank you, Councilmember Boone. Councilmember Overstreet.
Just want to clarify my purpose for wanting to have the work session for when we return. I want to make sure that we can have as many council members as possible. I do know that several people will be out of, not in Atlanta. And we should open it up to all of the council members and the public. I think everyone should be part of this conversation because the in-rem process is intricate, and we want to make sure that we're educating everyone. So as soon as we return, I'm happy to.
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. Councilmember Waits.
I just want to echo the sentiments, and also it's my understanding that the 3 properties in question, that they have been placed on some type of administrative review, so there will be no further action, is my understanding, regarding those properties.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Waits. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank my colleagues for their comments. You know, I, for one, am very concerned about what I've heard and have learned over the last several weeks as it relates to NREM and these processes and how citizens find themselves juxtaposed against enforced procedures and the court, where we made a move to have a housing code come underneath the police department. It wasn't to put a screw to our citizens. You know, I helped or attempted to help an individual last year. Unfortunately, he lost his home to demolition, the home that his mother had, and struggled to deal with the department despite the advocacy of my office being able to aid him. And I'm looking forward to a broader discussion, because I wonder how, you know, it's one thing to deal with a derelict and irresponsible landowner. It's something else to browbeat, harass, or be, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. It is to be indifferent towards citizens and their plight as they try to hang on to their properties. You know, a commercial person, somebody who is looking to make an investment and turn a buck, you know, that's one thing. But for somebody who's trying to save his mother's home where they grew up, you know, or where they, you know, a family member, a dear family member lived, and, you know, not everybody's in business, so not everybody has that investment. You know, I think we have to treat everybody the same under the law, but there has to be a recognition and sensitivity for each case. I mean, when I was in the District 3 seat from 1995 to 2001, I mean, I knocked down 800 structures, single-family homes, multifamily homes. You know, largely of them had fallen into disrepair, had been used for, you know, ill repute, you know, trap house before they were called trap houses, house of prostitution, derelict properties, and the like. But there was still, in the NREM process, if an owner wanted to or came at the 11th hour and could prove that they could do something with that property, it was thought better to have the property rehabbed than ending up with a blank slate and a lost piece of property or a lost deed. So I think that there is a lot of conversation and a lot of soul searching that the city has to do when it relates to these procedures and this department. And so I hope that we will have that discussion and perhaps broaden our perspective, given the fact that these efforts to demolish and take down properties is now juxtaposed us being the city with the greatest wealth disparity in America, with the highest contradiction or some of the least amount of available affordable housing for people. You know, I think it's time for us to certainly do a review to make sure that, amongst other things, the move to have the police supervise the code enforcement officers hasn't resulted in a step below criminality and punishment for those who find themselves in the housing code, caught up in the housing code process. So I look forward to that. And I yield, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Bond. Councilmember Boone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to employ Chief Bryant, Deputy Chief Tyus, Major Mitchell, to look closely at code enforcement. This is problematic when we are dealing with air properties and properties of our citizens. Some of them live in Maine and Florida, and they are struggling just to get a phone call back. Some are struggling trying to pay property taxes and other things. So let's be fair. Let's try to protect our community, but let's be a city that has a heart, that at least calls citizens and returns elected officials phone calls when it is involving property. Mr. Chair, these are folks' property. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? We move on to the next piece of legislation. And again, we will work to schedule this work session. Councilmember Waits.
I just simply wanted to indicate that I have worked closely with Officer Jocelyn Laus on a number of properties for individuals that have in fact been bad apples. And she has been extremely responsive in assisting us with those matters. In fact, illegal dumping was one of the major issues. And so I just wanted to make sure that we thank you for your service to the city in addition to the challenges that we're facing. But just wanted to note that some great work does in fact come out of that department in addition to the challenges that we're discussing today. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, Councilmember Waits. Next item, Ms. Lindo.
Next item, Mr. Chair, is number 4. That's 2020-1254. This is an ordinance by Councilmember Dustin Hillis to waive the provisions of Chapter 10, Article 2, Section 10-209C and D of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, so as to modify the hours of operation on Monday, May 30th, 2022, Memorial Day, only for all licensed establishments authorized to sell alcoholic beverages for on-premises consumption and for other purposes.
Thank you. And just for new members of the committee, this is just standard legislation that usually the PSLA chair introduces for exemptions around holidays and drinking hours. So I'll make a motion to approve. Second by Councilmember Boone.
Vote is open. The vote is closed.
Favorable, 7 yeas, 0 nays. Next item.
Next item, Mr. Chair, we're at held items. The first item to remove from held is item number 5, which is 2020-1076. This is an ordinance by Council Members Byron Amos and Michael Julian Bond, as amended by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee, to amend the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Part 2, Ordinances, Chapter 106, Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 5, Offenses by and against minors, Section 106-227, Curfew, authorized to add additional exemptions for homeless youth and teenagers and for other purposes. And Mr. Chair, we do have a substitute that provides some definition for homeless youth and some other clarifications for who would be under this exemption.
I'll make a motion to adopt that substitute. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
Vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Substitute is before us. Ms. Lindo.
Mr. Chair, I read it. It does not change the caption.
Okay, understood. All right, I'll make a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote. Excuse me, sorry, Ms. Overstreet. Go ahead with your comments, your questions.
So it wasn't an amendment, it was a substitute. So I'd like to know what's the difference in the substitute and the original paper.
Definitely. We had a work session, and it was some concerns from various stakeholders that came up out the work session. It was 3 things that was changed in this paper. One, we added a definition of homelessness for youth, and we actually used the definition used by HUD and Atlanta Public Schools. Then we also added, it was some concern by the law department that we was letting parents off the hook, so we clarified that as well to ensure that this paper did not do that. We were still able to hold parents accountable for their children and not being secure. And then the last piece was added an exemption if you was a married or emancipated juvenile up under Georgia law. So we added those 3 clarifications, which was address the 3 things that came out the work session.
Thank you.
The questions or comments before we call the vote? All right, please open the vote.
The vote is open, Mr. Chair. The vote is closed.
All right. Favorable as substituted, 6 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. Next item on held, Ms. Lindo.
Next item, Mr. Chair, is item number 9. This is 2020-12. 1206, and the substitute does change the caption, Mr. Chair, so if I can bring the substitute forward before I can read the...
Please. It does change its caption, you said. Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to bring the substitute forward. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is before us. Ms. Lindo.
This is an ordinance by Councilmember Alex Vaughn as substituted by the Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee to amend Chapter 10, Article 2, Division 5, Subdivision 1, Section 10-12 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to provide that there shall be no prohibition on food, services, establishments licensed to sell distilled spirits for consumption on the premises, to sell mixed drinks for off-premises consumption in approved containers under the conditions contained in state law and for other purposes.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Waits. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
7 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable as substituted. Item number 10, Ms. Lindo.
Next item, Mr. Chair, is item number 10, which is 22R 3255. This is a resolution by Council members Alex Vaughn and Byron Amos to amend 21R 3040, which established the City of Atlanta Alcohol Technical Advisory Group, ATAC 3, for the purpose of amending the membership to remove the appointment of the ex officio member of the License Review Board and to require that no sitting member of the License Review Board may serve on the ATAC 3 and for other purposes.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Amos. Please prepare the vote. Please hold the vote. Councilmember Vaughn.
Yeah, I requested this paper be held. I'm the author of ATAC 3. I was the author of ATAC 2. I do not support this legislation. No one associated with this legislation has approached me, talked to me, reached out to me to discuss these issues. I attended the ATAC 3 meeting last Wednesday, and it became painfully apparent that the board had not been briefed on the purpose of ATAC 3, why they were being impaneled, what the full range of issues and responsibilities were that they were being called and impaneled for. I speak against this legislation for a couple of reasons. One, the members of the License Review Board are not voting members of ATAC 3. They cannot influence the policy of ATAC 3. One of the things, second, the members of ATAC 3, most of whom are private citizens, don't have the experience with the License Review Board or the general knowledge of what the License Review Board does or might do. And so the idea is, and has been during ATAC 1 and ATAC 2, and ergo for ATAC 3, that you would have these members available or a designee available to answer questions and to give the board insight on the decisions ultimately that the board would make. And then third, I understand that the authors of this legislation, including the chair, have been all the way around the mulberry bush to talk to the mayor about this particular piece of legislation when the mayor has no role in ATAC 3 other than to make an appointment. You know, this isn't the school board. You know, the mayor is not the principal of City Hall. And, you know, I don't appreciate people going to tell the mayor on me about what I've done with my legislation that this body last year supported unanimously. The practice of going to everybody else in City Hall as opposed to the author of a piece of legislation not only breaks the norms of the council, but is rude and disrespectful of the member. And so I'm calling and asking my colleagues today to file this legislation. It is completely unnecessary. It is introduced by those that have no experience with ATAC 3 or ATAC 2 or ATAC 1. They have not been a part of the process, and that was, again, painfully apparent at the meeting last Wednesday at 5 p.m., the virtual meeting. And so I'd like to make a substitute motion to file.
All right, Councilmember Bonds made a substitute motion to file. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Waits. Please prepare the vote on the substitute motion to file.
The vote is open.
Thank you.
The vote is closed.
All right, 4 yeas, 1 nay, 2 abstentions. That item is filed. We'll now move on to our walk-in legislation. Ms. Linda.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is resolution, the ELMS ID number 29300. It's a resolution by Public Safety and Legal Administration Committee authorizing the Community Development and Human Services Committee, Public Safety Committee, and the Zoning Committee to address the City of Atlanta's top priority blighted properties by council district and for other purposes.
Since this is a walk-in, can you go ahead and read it in whole, please?
Whereas the City of Atlanta has had difficulties addressing blighted properties for years, and whereas council members and their constituents have concerns over City of Atlanta's process for assessing and addressing blighted properties, and whereas the Atlanta City Council desires to take action on addressing the worst instances of blight in their districts, and whereas council members have a deep knowledge and understanding of the most egregious blight concerns in their respective district, and whereas in cooperation with the Atlanta Code Enforcement, the Atlanta City Council will address their most severe cases of blight, and whereas this effort will assist and redirect the City of Atlanta to those properties that council members have deemed their top priority, now therefore be resolved by the City Council of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, that each council member shall compile their top 5 priorities to address blight in their districts, which they have identified as the most egregious offenders. Be further resolved that council members shall supply the Community Development and Human Services Committee, Public Safety Committee, and the Zoning Committee with their list within 10 days of passage. Be it finally resolved that the Atlanta Code Enforcement will report their progress to the aforementioned committees on a biweekly basis.
All right. That is the walk-in. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Norwood. Please prepare the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed.
All right, 7 yeas, 0 nays. That item is favorable. I believe that completes our agenda, Ms. Lindo. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
I do have a announcement. The City Council will begin at spring recess next Monday, April 4th through April 15th, and meetings will resume with the full council on Monday, April 18th for the full City Council meeting. And our next PSLA committee meeting will be held on Monday, April 25th at 2 p.m. So I wanted to make that announcement. And Councilmember Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it was announced before my arrival, but I just want to acknowledge the passing of the great Reverend Posey Redmond out of Southeast Atlanta. He was a dynamic, powerful force in our community. He not only pastored in Southeast Atlanta and had a tremendous impact on that community, but it was broad and deep within the clergy of the broader Atlanta metropolitan area. He is a great man, and I believe he'll be funeralized on Saturday. His daughter, Pam, is the classmate of myself and Councilwoman Boone, and so we want to extend our deepest condolences to the family, the Redmond family, at this moment. And second, I have a community announcement that is not necessarily related to public safety. The Hello Fresh Meals with Meaning Grab and Go will be this Wednesday at 3 p.m. at the Greater Piney Grove Baptist Church at 1921 Glenwood Avenue at 3 p.m. So we want to ask all those whether we're going to be distributing about 8,000 meals again on Wednesday. This is a drive-up, walk-up portion of that giveaway. If you don't need it, please pass the word along to someone who does. Atlanta is now the number 2 city in America for inflation, and that inflation extends to groceries and produce. And so if you know someone who needs the help, if you need the help, there's no prerequisite, no shame in the game. Just drive up, walk up on Wednesday at 3 p.m., and we'll see you there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I withdraw.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Boone. Councilmember Overstreet.
Yeah, just a couple comments about our code enforcement conversations today. We just sent a paper on to full council that we brought into committee today because we are going to address code enforcement by district. There's no words around getting code enforcement right. We have to. I'm so thankful that you guys are here today to hear these conversations from the council members, because it is just as important that we address blight in the city of Atlanta as it is for us to be fair in homeowners holding on to properties that are in their families or properties that have not been notified properly. We just need to be a fair city, and blight is real. And so both papers are necessary, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation today. So I'll be reaching out with my 5 top properties. I actually have more than 5. It's quite an extensive list, which is baffling considering that they've been in the process for a very long time, and then we've got those others that are in the system that are not supposed to be demolished, and those properties are demolished. So we have a code enforcement problem. And I'm glad that we're having a conversation to finally get to a place where we're being fair and efficient as fiduciaries of the city, because code enforcement is definitely directly tied to our quality of life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Overstreet. Councilmember Amos.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just remembered earlier this week I was asked to represent the Public Safety Committee and the Council in making a video to a superhero that we lost from APD, Officer Jermaine Chester, who passed unexpectedly. So just on behalf of us, we just want to send our condolences to the APD family and, of course, to that officer's family as well. So.
Most definitely. Thank you, Vice Chair Amos. Councilmember Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this Wednesday, March 30th, 7 p.m., we are so happy to launch the mayor's midnight basketball, 7 p.m. at the C.T. Martin Recreation Center. They will also have folks on site to expunge records, jobs right on the spot, and also resume writing classes. So please come out to the midnight basketball launch. It is much more than midnight basketball. So thank you, Mayor Dickens, for your vision for several years for the midnight basketball here in the city of Atlanta.
Thank you, Councilmember Boone. Councilmember Waits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to provide a save the date for May 6th. We will be recognizing and honoring all of the former women legislators who have served in this distinguished body, as well as those who've served as mayor for our city. So that will be happening on May 6th, and that save the date will be going out this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Waits. Any more announcements or questions or well wishes?
And finally, Monica Kaufman-Pearson has agreed to sign on as our mistress of ceremony. So we're very excited about that.
Thank you, Councilmember Waits. No other items? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Non-unanimous consent, we will be adjourned. Thank you.